Welcome to the next video in the Python series. In this video, we're going to talk about tuples. Tuples are another very useful data type in Python. So let's take a look at it, and hopefully you'll really get a good understanding of how we can use tuples. In this video, we're going to talk about another data type in Python called tuples. Now, tuples are similar to lists, but they are immutable, which means you cannot change them once they're created. Okay? There's some things we can do with them, but we certainly cannot change them. We can't add things to them. We can't delete things from them. We can't change the value of any of the elements in them, but they're still pretty useful. So let's jump into tuples. And we're going to start by making an empty tuple. My tuple, we'll just call it my tup equals open close. That's an empty tuple. Not a lot you can do with it, but there are situations where it might be useful to have an empty tuple. Now, let's say my tup1 is equal to 123.54, comma. If I'm going to make a tuple of one element, I still have to use the comma. Okay? That's just a syntactical requirement so that the interpreter knows that you are making a tuple. Okay? It's got to see that comma. If it's empty, the open close gets it. But if you've got a value in there, it needs that comma to properly make the tuple. So let's go ahead and actually, I'm going to just put a couple comments in here. For when you go back to this, this is an empty tuple. And this is, I'm just going to say, you still need a comma for a tuple of one element. Okay? So let's go ahead and print these two tuples. Print my tup and print my tup1. Control save. Let's say Python tuples.py. And there you have it. Notice it returned the empty tuple, and it returned the exact same syntax of the single element tuple. Okay? Now, here's a little interesting piece for Python. If I have a method where I would typically return a single value, but I really want to return like 8 values from that method, I can just put those 8 values in a tuple and return it. And I know they're not going to get changed, right? So I can return that tuple and I can access those values as values that came back from whatever that method was. That's one place I've seen tuples used quite a bit. Okay, now we can access tuples with slicing the same way we do with the list. Okay, so let's just call this accessing tuples with slicing. And let's say same as with lists. Okay, so I'm going to say my big tup equals, let's just make a really big tuple. Let's say 3, 5, 7, 9, 7, 4, 3, 2, 1. Big tuple. Lots of small integers in it. And let's print my tup, my big tup. And we'll go from 2 through 4. Okay, which is going to be 0, 1, 2, and 3. So I should see 7 and 9 when I print it, because 4 should be a bridge too far, as we've seen. Okay, so let's test that out. Seven and 9. Okay, so we can see that we can still slice and access those values. We just can't change them. Okay, let's scroll this up a little bit. So the note, the thing we want to remember here is we cannot change or add, delete from tuples. But we can merge them with slicing. And here's where you're going to see some of the power. So I have made my tup1, my big tup, and I want to put even more in. So I'm going to say new tup equals, and I'm going to concatenate these suckers together. So I'm going to say my tup, which isn't doing a lot because it's empty, plus my tup1, which at least has a value in it, plus my big tup, which has several values in it. But now I'm literally just going to put in monkey, banana, elephant. Okay, I'm just going to slap everything, including the kitchen sink. Oh, unnecessary quotation marks. I'm going to slap everything in the kitchen sink into there and print new tup. Okay, so let's see what happens with this Frankenstein monster tuple. And there it is. Now, it's not going to give me an empty position, but that the empty set was merged into this, which did nothing. But there's my single, there's all of big tup, and there's monkey, banana, and elephant. Now, I can't change this one, okay? But it's there. So I can slice around to get what I need, or I can build this monster tuple and pass that as a value. So they're very powerful, and they don't change. And there's points in your code where that might be really cool to know that they're not mutable. Okay? So, the last thing I want to show you is that you can delete a tuple. You need to be careful not to try to access it after you've deleted it, but you can delete it. So I'm going to show you. I'm going to say delete my tup1, that single element one. And then I'm going to try to print it. And I should generate a runtime error. My tup1. And we're going to take a look at that. And I'm going to mark this in the source code that it throws a runtime error. Okay? So we should not be surprised by that at all. Okay? I'm going to save this. Let's do a clear so we're sure what we're doing. And here we go. So we got the big print, and then we deleted it and tried to print this guy. And it says, here's our traceback. In line 40 of module main, in line 34 in main, print my tup1, throws a runtime. I mean, it even gives me the line that I intentionally crashed. And it says, unbound local error, local variable my tup1 referenced before assignment. When you see reference before assignment, it means it doesn't exist yet. Okay? It hasn't been given a value, so Python does not have that on the stack. Why? Because in the line right above it, we deleted it. So there's a look at tuples. They are very, very powerful. They are also immutable. So as you can see, tuples are very useful to us in Python. The thing we need to understand about tuples, as we've mentioned all through this video, is they are immutable. We can combine them with splicing, but once we create them, that's all we get. We can read from them. We can even index in them to get the values, but we can't change them. In the next video, we're going to talk about a less useful but equally important data type known as sets. So I'll see you on the other side.